Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kristen Bauer. I'm the head of policy here at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. I would like to welcome you all to this special International Women's Day webinar on how to navigate switching roles in ADR. This webinar will explore the dynamic careers of ADR professionals who often wear multiple hats, acting as counsel, mediators, arbitrators, and experts at various stages of their career. We have a terrific panel of experts here with us today that will also be examining some of the kind of metaphorical hats that women wear to manage their careers and also confront some of the gender-specific challenges in the industry. So before I turn you over to our wonderful panel of speakers, just a few pieces of housekeeping to take care of quickly here at the top. So first off, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available on CIArb's YouTube channel following this event. Secondly, we want this whole discussion to be interactive and dynamic. We'll leave maybe some time at the end for general Q&A. However, we encourage participants to use the chat box as well as the Q&A box to interact with us throughout this webinar. So please feel free to add your questions as they come to you throughout, and we will try to address those throughout the discussion and incorporate those into this whole discussion. So with that housekeeping out of the way, I'm going to turn the floor over to our moderator, Cecilia Flores Rueda. She's the chair of the CIArb's North America branch and the founding partner of Flores Rueda Abogados. So Cecilia, over to you.
Thank you, Kristen. It's an honor to be here and to have this wonderful panel, which I will introduce. We will have Edna Sussman. Edna is a full-time independent arbitrator and mediator, and is the distinguished ADR practitioner in residence at Fordham University School of Law. Elena Gutierrez Garcia de Cortázar. Elena is an independent arbitrator and consultant in her offices in Paris and Madrid. Kaumbu Mwondela. Kaumbu is a leader, lawyer, arbitrator, and consultant based in Zambia. Dr. Jose Antonio Rivas. Jose Antonio is an international arbitrator, partner of Strategy LLP, and adjunct professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Well, so this wonderful panel. We will start with a question for Edna. How do you manage the challenge of switching between multiple roles throughout your career, such as counsel, arbitrator, partner, parent, or spouse? You're on mute, Edna.
We're going to start the discussion with a path that seems to be increasingly one that's being embarked on by young women as well as increasingly young men. So I think I was a little bit ahead of my time, having decided to become essentially a full-time arbitrator when I was still a very young partner at one of the major law firms. So, the advice I would give is it can be done, but you need to think about, your priorities and map out a plan for your life. Do you really want to do the same thing for your whole life? Are you comfortable trying to do different things at different times? And, and develop a plan for yourself and then figure out how you're going to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. So I left the law firm when I was only, I think, 42 years old. It just seemed like litigation was very expensive and not very productive. And I just thought there had to be a better way. Plus, there was no computer in those days. So I had fewer options than you have now. I could not work at home. It just wasn't something that was feasible. So I did live my life in stages. I had 4 kids that I really wanted to have. And I thought there was a time for spending more time with them. And time to go back to full-time practice. So I guess the advice I would give, and maybe we'll get into more details later about how to do it, if you do decide to do it in stages, as it appears more people are doing now, don't get out of the game completely. figure out how to stay in the game while you are prioritizing different things in your life. So I got on the AAA panel, for example, very soon after I left the firm, so I could begin to build what is, can be a very slow build for people, start building the practice. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we can go into more details about how to achieve your goals while you're mixing up what you're doing as we move on.
Thank
I just
you,
want to say it
Edna.
is doable. You just have to plan it and execute.
Sounds good, Edna. Thank you. Elena, I have a question for you, and you are the right person just to answer this. What strategies help maintain balance and avoid burnout in demanding careers?
Well, if I had the answer to that, then probably I wouldn't be here. But thank you. First of all, thank you for having me join this panel with this. I'm really excited about the topic, and of course, my esteemed co-panelist. About burnout, I've given some thought about this. As I say, I don't have a magical wand that will let you know how to do this. We've chosen what we've chosen. I mean, I think that the beginning is to embrace our profession with passion and with realism. This profession is tough. There's no way out of that. So now that you've actually understood that you want this profession, you can try not to be burned out by it. And to me, there are like 5 working points that have helped me in the past and helped me when I'm in doubt, or when I feel that the balance is not with me, or that burnout could be taking over. And the first one to me is to define what being successful means to me, because the best way to be unhappy is to pursue someone else's idea of success. So to me, at a certain point of my career, I had to decide what made me happy. Was it the cases? Was it the money? Was it the status? Was it the influence? And I particularly remember once in my career when I switched careers several times. I've been counsel, I've been, except for in-house, I've been the Secretary General of an international institution. I've been, and I am now, an arbitrator. I've been in international institutions as UNESCO, the UN. So I've been around, and sometimes in my career I had to decide if I wanted, what is it that was my driver? Because if you pursue, as I say, the someone else's drivers, then you will be sooner or later unhappy. So define and understand what makes you happy of this profession. I think we have the best profession in the world. Sometimes we forget this, but you need to understand what is it that you define your success in your own terms. That for me was one of the big ones. Another one that is still costing me to do is to embrace suboptimal, to let go of perfectionism. This was killing me, and still is when I lose track. So suboptimal is a very nice place to be most of the times. That doesn't mean you're forsaking quality. That doesn't mean you're forsaking rigor. It means that between reading the same brief 10 times or 8 times, peace of mind exists. So to me, embracing suboptimal, understanding that perfection is not always the way to go, was reassuring to keep burnout away from me. Also, learning to say no, and not overcommitting to social, professional, or family obligations out of guilt or out of someone else's happiness. So learning to say no is also something that I am always still learning, but is quite refreshing when you actually master it, because it keeps you focused. And also, to me, as a woman in a very demanding career, having building a very strong support system was also very important to keep a balance. I always say, and I think that the coming celebration of Women's Day is a very nice reminder that I wouldn't be where I am without senior women having supported me, having listening to me, and having cheered me up when I needed someone to say, "You've got this."
Thank you, Elena. And actually, that was a very good piece of advice for me. I'm a Virgo, so I'm a perfectionist. Jose Antonio, how do male and female professionals approach work-life balance differently? And what can they learn from each other?
Thank you, Cecilia. And before launching into your interesting question, I would like to thank the Charter Institute of Arbitrators, especially you, as well as Kristen and everyone who made this possible. And to be quite frank, I also want to say that I'm quite honored to be on this panel because obviously I'm not a woman, but I embrace very much the the celebration of International Women's Days, and had really wanted to be on a panel that researched and talked about women in our profession seen from the male's perspective. So I hope that that what I share is somehow a bit interesting. So the approach, going back to your question, the approach of women and male is of course different. I would say that of course historically male have not had to sort of conquer the space that they've had at least in modern society and in old society. So that approach itself is sort of a given. Um, and therefore male take for granted some of the privileges that exist. Um, I would say stopping at that, I would also say that I would refer to how much I have learned from some of my female colleagues or friends. I recall one friend who is actually an economist. I remember her sharing with me at some stage, early in her and my career, that she had sort of defined space before her boss at the time, in terms of she wouldn't be working 12 hours or 14 hours. And that's something that I believe that male tend not to be aware of. And that was an earlier realization in my career, that you actually have to define what other parts of your life you're interested in, and you may have a family, or you may have hobbies, or you may have other stuff. So that in itself became very clear, because at the beginning I used to simply be available 24/7, and nothing, even family related matters were not there. Of course, as I became a father and a husband, that also taught me how to sort of define space and limits. So that's one thing. The other part is that in modern society, I think that is very important to understand for males that you are part of a team, wherever you are. You are part of a team as counsel. You're part of a team as within your family, as father, or with your other relatives, or you are part of a team as an arbitrator, because although it's an intuito persona job, being an arbitrator, you still may have support. You have your co-arbitrators, and with that goes the issue of figuring out the space and time and structure and order that you must have to make things happen. So nothing really happens on your own. So you have support by everyone, but everyone also has support from you. So making sure that you are in every track, aware of this, and working as a team member, letting people know about your schedule, about your structure, about your dates. And I think that if you do that, if you learn to do that as a male, you will be better off. And I think that we have a huge lot to learn from our female colleagues because they've had to gain their space with which way more pain than males have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose Antonio. That was very good. Let's now move to cross-role benefits and leadership impact. And I would like to hear from you, Kaumbu. Can you share an example where a skill from a role positively influenced one another, either professionally or personally?
Thank you, Cecilia. I will ride on Jose's thanks and gratitude to FCIArb and to everybody for being here. I'm very privileged to share this platform with you at this time. Regarding your question, I think it's interesting. Part of what I do in my own sort of life and work is I manage a practice. You know, it's a small sort of boutique practice in Zambia. And what I have had to do as part of that role at various stages in my career is to case manage. You know, I've had to participate, you know, in the case management. And that has helped me not only, you know, in terms of managing the cases that are flowing through the firm, but it has helped me in my role as arbitrator because it's a big part of what one has to do. You know, you get the preliminary meeting going and you set out the schedule of how you're going to proceed, you know, with the case. And you try and work with the parties to ensure that, you know, you stick to that timetable. So, you know, it has helped me, you know, in that regard. But also, one of the things that I have had to do as a lawyer is to develop some listening skills. Whether you are taking instructions or you are attending, you know, a meeting with very angry, very belligerent parties, oftentimes, you know, if you develop a keen sense of listening skills, you can quickly identify perhaps where the real challenges are, where the common ground is, what the route to resolution, perhaps mediation might be the appropriate way to, you know, resolve the difficulty. That is a skill that I think I have honed over time, you know, in my practice. And it's a skill that has been transferable, you know, from as I don one hat or other, it has helped me, you know, in that regard. And perhaps finally, you know, before I yield the platform, in my role, again, as a legal practitioner, so perhaps I need to say, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, I am one of those oddities that both sits as arbitrator and as counsel, the classic double hatting. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But as counsel, I have obviously had to read quite widely, depending on the instructions, you know, that I am dealing with. And I've had to read large volumes of material quite quickly. And that is a skill that has been useful as I have done increasingly more arbitration. And the matters are voluminous. Perhaps the documents, as you are doing discovery, are voluminous. Because of that skill of having to read quite widely, quite rapidly, I've been able to develop that skill. And when I think about my role, perhaps another role that I play as a father, I have, you know, a spectrum in terms of the ages of my children. Some are going into, you know, on the upper end, going into university, on the lower end in grade school. And the spectrum of homework varies from calculus to, classical music. And, of course, one is expected to be above average in their capacity at all of this spectrum. But with the benefit of being able to read a little bit widely and assimilate material a little bit quickly, I find that those skills have been helpful to me as a parent as well. So just to say, everything that I have said is also very true. I am married to a professional. She's not a lawyer. She's in the development space and, economics and development. But everything that I have said, maybe amplified several times, is what I see as my spouse plays her roles as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, as a professional at work. She must have good listening skills because, when she comes home, everybody, including daddy, wants her attention. And somehow she is able to apportion, everybody feels heard, everybody has their place, in the home. Homework, if the challenges are mathematics, she would defer to me. But everything else, she is applying herself and somehow, is successfully delivering. When I talk about case management, right, she is, basically running the home and doing so successfully with multiple streams of activities and demands. So I have a lot of respect for professional women who also are running affairs in their domestic situation. I have a tremendous amount of respect because I buckle under this weight many times, but oftentimes without complaint. I see nothing but strength and poise. So perhaps I could leave it there for now.
Thank you, Kaumbu. It's wonderful to have multiple hats. Elena, would you like to share an example?
Yes. Actually, I normally wear 3 hats, professionally speaking. The biggest one, the one that I spent more time doing is, as you know, as an arbitrator. But I have had come to the habit. I did a lot of counsel work in the old days for more than 20 years. That's behind me, not so much. Why? Because normally I came to have the habit of taking one case as counsel or co-counsel per year. And this is just to not let my ego come in the way of being a good arbitrator. So one of the things I've learned is that doing some counsel work and not abandoning it absolutely helps me stay humble and makes me keep perspective and recognizing that the not always weird decisions counsels make as weird as they appear come from a bad place. There's a whole universe going on in parallel to the arbitrations. There's something called client with priorities. Everything of that comes into the actual hearing room where the arbitrators sit or where they deliberate. So being a little bit, keeping a tiny bit of my old counsel me active is very, very useful as an arbitrator. I do believe that I'm a better arbitrator because of this. And I put you an example of last week. We're deliberating, of course. Document production was passed. It was like 4 weeks before a big hearing we had. And of course, this is when counsels prepare their witness, their expert witness, and there was a smoking gun. Someone found a smoking gun. Was it in possession of the party that was putting it forward? Of course it was. Was it somewhere in a locker in the middle of nowhere that, of course, came up probably in the conversations when preparing a witness, an engineer that said, but how could we not put forward this document? Of course we have this document. And they did. And they put it forward. It was extremely, it was clearly out of the procedural order schemes. my co-arbitrators, I was presiding arbitrators, my co-arbitrators were, this is bad faith, how dare they, this is too late in proceedings, we should refuse it and take it into account in costs. Probably me 5 years ago would have been aligned to that way of thinking, because it was very, very late in proceedings to putting this forward. But of course, because I was a counsel and because I know how clients work, especially some clients, particular clients in some sectors, I could relate. I could relate to the counsel, and this was a smoking gun. Would that make me admit it because I relate and I empathize with the counsel? It depends on the case, but at least I didn't think, and I was not automatically convinced that this was bad faith, that it was playing games, that it was guerrilla tactics. There's a million reasons why someone is putting forward some or behaving procedurally awkwardly, not necessarily jumping directly into a bad faith approach to an arbitration. And that is something I learned. Conversely, when I am a counsel, I see so far ahead when a cross-examination is not flying, when I read better the arbitrators. And normally when I co-counsel, they hate me because it's like, cut it, it's not flying. You already lost 2 of the tribunal members. You're this close to lose the whole of the tribunal. They're not interested, they're tired, you're just not making your point forward, no matter how important you think it is. And that is something that is very useful both ways. So I do think that primarily I act as an arbitrator. This is what I do. This is what I want to do. But having a slight peek into the counsel work, an active one, not in the good old days, what I did when I was a counsel, has been tremendously useful in both hats. And the third hat, which was me being a professor, which I love, also comes handy when understanding these new generations. When you're down the road for some years, you start having trouble in understanding how people actually, not only employees, but also counsels in cases, react. And I can assure you, Z generations and Y generations and millennials, they're totally different animals. So my students, which I have to handle and I see on a weekly basis, keep me young. So, and I understand their mindsets and can translate it into my professional work as an arbitrator. And as a counsel when I have junior associates working with me.
Thank you, Elena. I also teach, and I love being in contact with my students because they bring me to life. It's wonderful to teach. And I also think that we have the obligation to teach the next generations. Thank you, Elena.
And let them teach us.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Kaumbu, I would like to move back to you. How do personal experiences, for example, being a parent or a spouse, shape leadership styles and decision making?
Thank you, Cecilia. I think that invariably we bring a lot of who we are to whatever it is that we do. And the lessons that we learn in one area of our lives spills over into other areas of your lives. So for me, being a parent, that's one of the most important things. It's my greatest job, being a parent, right? And something that I have learned along the way, because these are my children and the things that they go through move me to be empathetic, right? I might have high expectations. They may have real struggles, and somehow we negotiate, a conclusion with the adult in the room, having a little bit more patience, a little bit more, tolerance, etc. Those empathy qualities or skills, I find that they've bled into my leadership, into the way I lead my team, and into the way I provide leadership in various circumstances. I think I'm that much more patient I talked about listening skills earlier. I take a little bit more time to listen and to observe. Something else that I have had to develop in the course of my legal career and in the course of, in fact, in the course of being a parent, perhaps going back there, is not just listening to the words, but observing the demeanor, listening and watching and observing and gleaning the entire body language, if you like, that which is unsaid. So that's also a skill that I think I have polished domestically in dealing with, family members, that has served me quite well in my professional career, and particularly, as I practice law and as I work as an arbitrator, because you are listening as well as a mediator, because you're listening to the parties, but you're also observing, their demeanor, and I think that it has served me well, and I think it has served those that I serve well. Perhaps the last one I could share is being decisive, right? Being decisive. It is a quality that also has been refined in a setting other than my sort of professional formal leadership roles, where you are confronted by various situations that require a decision to be made. And that decision must be made by you, right? Training oneself to gather the best quality information that is available, again, as quickly as possible, and sorting out from that array of information, taking a decision that is, in the best interest of those that the decision is being made in respect of, and then, dealing with the fallout. Hopefully you have a clear conscience about the fact that you made the best quality decision you could have in those circumstances with the information that you have. Again, this is something that I have carried with me into the leadership roles that I play variously. So I think that, going back to where I began, the roles, the various roles that we play, I think we develop a lot of skills, attributes, qualities in the discharge of those roles, and they cross over into other roles in a helpful way. Of course, the disclaimer is that a little bit earlier, in my career, as I spent a lot of the earlier part of my legal career in the courtroom. So I was a litigator. And when Elena talks about cross-examination, it tugs at a string in my insides, because I absolutely love to cross-examine. And that skill would sometimes find itself, at a dinner table, and it would make for very bad conversation, because, then you're cross-examining the waiter as you go through a menu, and, so you obviously have to be careful and draw some lines. But there is a lot of cross-fertilization, which I think is beneficial.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on and pick up a little bit on what was said about essentially mediation skills. So I've served as both a mediator and an arbitrator. And really it plays into this narrative in two ways. First of all, look for opportunities. If you're taking the path that I took, look for opportunities to get into the profession on something that's new. So when the Southern District, the federal courthouse here in New York, started the mediation program, believe it or not, back in 1997, my husband brought home the law journal and said, look, this is just starting. And I thought, this is the way to stay in the game while I am taking a less active role in the profession. So I started mediating back in 1997, when it was really quite a new concept. And I think that is part of the reason that I established as much of an international reputation as I did, because there was nobody really in the space that did international arbitration that also served as a mediator. So it made me somewhat unique. So this is really a plug for keep your eyes and ears open for new things that are opening up in the profession, so you could be there at the beginning and people notice you and you can become better known and therefore more likely to get appointments as an arbitrator or mediator. I do recommend it in terms of the skill set. They really do help one another. Being able to evaluate the legal positions is very helpful in helping the parties in the mediation. And obviously being able to work with people and helping them sort through their their problems. Is there a way to sort through some of the procedural issues that come up without having to actually make a decision that's going to cost a lot of time and money? Can you get them to agree on some middle path? Obviously working with your panel when there are disagreements on which way the case is going, how do you work with people to kind of work through it? So the two skill sets really are so instrumental really in making you better at the other professional avenue. So I highly recommend that. Somebody I know actually was doing suicide hotline work in order to develop her empathetic skills, because listening, as was said, is just so important, and really understanding what's driving it. Why are they making this silly motion that's going to cost a lot of time and money when it doesn't really make a difference to the case? What is driving that? It really builds up your intuition, so you can handle the arbitration issues that come up in a more efficient and more productive fashion, really, for the parties, as well as I said, the flip side, being able to predict how an arbitrator or a judge might decide an issue, because you have the expertise as a decision maker. So I highly recommend actually developing both skill sets.
Well, I'd like to share a word or two also. I understand that we're on the topic of playing different roles and different hats, and I would like to address two issues on that. One, and just for background for everyone, as many here, I also have the hat of professor of international investment arbitration and public international law, and I'm an arbitrator, and I'm also counsel. One thing that is current in today's world is there's some sort of an anxiety of doing lots of things and what to do, especially for the young professionals. Sometimes I have students or even colleagues coming to me and asking, what should I be doing now to be in a great position in 10, 15 years or even 5 years? And that question comes across quite a bit. I'd like to go back to some of the words that Elena shared in terms of the passion for what you do, and the passion for your profession. And that is unfortunately something that you will not find elsewhere. You either find it in you or you don't find it. I mean, that is something that you cannot learn, and that is something that drives you. Now, having said that, every human being, every professional is unique, and whether because they have a specific cultural background or a national background, or because they speak several languages, etc. But they're also unique in what they like and what they're generally or naturally good to perform. In my case, I recall that throughout, so even since high school or even early on in college, I love to organize panels and sort of thought groups. And even at when I was at a big law firm, that sort of skill really had no value whatsoever. It had no value because you're just spending time, you're organizing a bunch of people. Perhaps the themes are very interesting, but it's not billable work. So you're just doing it on your own. But still, for some reason, I kept on doing organizing panels and gathering people. And at some stage, that sort of pursuit allowed me to, one, meet a lot of people, and two, 5 years ago, we co-founded with the same person that I teach at Georgetown. We co-founded the Washington Arbitration Week, and then the World Arbitration Update. And now it's well-known arbitration week. Now, I believe that it's the largest in the States and perhaps in the Americas, and the message is there sometimes more than a set of menus or strategies that you would learn from elsewhere. One has to find what do you like, what do you are you really good at, and invest in that, because there's a passion there to do things. And then if you do that, then whatever you practice, whether good or bad, that will become your way of work, and that will likely perhaps become your way of sort of earning a living. So I think that there's something to be said there in terms of finding what you really like. If it's teaching for me was the same thing. I've been teaching 20 years, more than 20 years, and it became from a passion. And nowadays, believe it or not, I'm having a case in which I am counsel, and I'm doing it with a former student. So that is part of it. Arbitration is, quite similar. I started many years ago putting my name in list, thinking that that would only come 30 years later. And when I started my firm 6 years ago, I was have been highly surprised and lucky as well, because the first relevant arbitration in terms of sustainability financially came from an arbitration. Surprisingly, it came from an arbitration. I just had put my foot in counsel work, very nervous, but it came thanks to arbitration. So you have to start early, putting your name and believing that it's a process. This profession is a long-term profession. This profession is something that if you have sort of a big game plan, you will be able to do for many years with the multiple hats. And the last thing, perhaps the most important hat is the hat that you have with respect to family and your children. What I wanted to share there is that, especially for male, is that we should lead by example. And what I mean by that is that it's very easy, especially for a male, to simply embrace what past generations have done, and do simply as my father or my grandfather did. But there's a huge challenge here in terms of changing everything. I have, for instance, 3 girls. So my example is in part, as a father, how do I play my role with respect to them, to my wife? How do I contribute not only work-wise but also home-wise, and keep a balance there. But that is not only a family sort of role, because you have your associates and you're also portraying how you behave with people there and with your students. So it all sort of has an effect, and people see it. People see it, and you're sort of showing the example that you are. You cannot be chauvinistic in one role and then loving in the other one. It doesn't work that way. We are who we are.
And let me jump in, because some of the things you mentioned are exactly the kinds of things that I did, that I think women who are living their life in stages can do, because they are less time consuming than a full-time job at a law firm, obviously. So, getting involved in bar association, rising to leadership positions as you did. I always think if you can get yourself a platform, chairing something important, hopefully. If you put in the work, there are lots of opportunities to rise in all of these organizations. They're looking for worker bees. Look for interesting ideas that are out there. Somebody may spark something. I mean, one of the ways I became famous, I think, was the psychology of decision making. It's got to be, now it's such an old subject, but I was at an American Bar Association meeting and they were talking about work that had been done on judges in terms of psychology of decision making. And I thought, this is very interesting. This is what we do. So keep your eyes and ears open for new subjects. There's always something new in this field. So keep your eyes, and glom onto it. So organize panels as you did. Speaking is really important to get out there. I always recommend, if you can, turn it into an article. It can be a short article, but turn it into an article so there's something that survives from it. I always say, my daughter-in-law is a professor, and when she's asked to speak, it's usually about a paper that she has published. In our field, they think, gee, it'll be nice to have Elena or Kaumbu on the panel. And then you have to go figure out, what are you going to say about it? So you've thought about something new that you hadn't thought about before, publish it. Short articles are accepted by a lot of publications. When you're at these conferences, put together a bunch of people to have dinner with. People will be very happy to be invited, and you can really extend your network and have more than the cocktail party conversation with them, really having nice, meaningful, long dinner. So really seize the opportunities that are available in this profession to build up your personal credibility while you're doing perhaps a part-time gig in the profession as you move forward in your life in the different passages, and then, eventually go back to full-time when you're ready. But you'll have a reputation. You'll have a reputation in place by then.
That's great. Practical advice. Thank you. I would like now to move to setting boundaries and managing expectations. And Elena, I would like to hear from you. How do you set boundaries to ensure that all aspects of your personal and professional life receive the necessary attention?
Thank you, Cecilia. Well, I think that this is something that everyone who is a spouse and not only a spouse and a parent, but who wants some balance and put in place some boundaries with the demanding jobs we chose. Remember, keyword, working word, chose, is very difficult. To me, and this is one of the things, I had the privilege of founding a mentorship program some time ago for the Latin American associations, which I preside, as you know, women's women, Ibero-American women in arbitration. We have this Mujeres, where we join, and one of our programs is a mentoring program, is very successful. And one of the things when I do the opening, I always say, because I truly believe this, and I tell myself, not only my mentees, is that you can actually have everything in life. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying to you, to your face, with a purpose. What you cannot do is be it's not even, before I said the perfect mother, the perfect professional, the perfect, and I'm suboptimal now, remember? So I'm not saying perfect, a reasonable mother, a reasonable professor, a reasonable arbitrator, a reasonable daughter, friend, and still have me time. You can do it. I thoroughly think that you can have everything in life with a bit of organizations, but not in the same day. So sometimes I am the fantastic arbitrator, the best that there's out there in the market. And I go to a hearing for 2 weeks, and there I am an arbitrator, and that's what I do. And I ace it. And then on Tuesdays, I pick my kids from school. So I'm a not so good arbitrator on Tuesdays, on that particular Tuesdays, but I am a mother. So you can do everything in life, just not the same day. So if we try to introduce or factoring the word flexibility and understanding that not everyone will expect everything from you all the time at the same time. This is just not the case. If you think about it, you have clients, they're not always at 8 p.m. in your phone. Sometimes they are, mostly they aren't. So at 8 p.m. you can be the perfect whatever else. Because you don't have to be a professional. So to me, this was extremely important, the factoring in and allowing myself to understand that I can have everything in life. I decide what everything means. Maybe in my case, it is a moving target, but it's a big one. I'm a very ambitious person, personally and professionally, but I have this magical superpower that I only need to sleep 4 hours a day. So that comes in very, very handy for these purposes. But to me, the setting of boundaries, as Jose Antonio was saying, no, I need to put a stop. I don't have this problem. I have my phone, I carry it everywhere. I should look at that, but maybe I do. It's not that healthy. But to me, I can. I mean, of course, the lunch times are sacred. When I'm with my kids, I'm not on the phone. But it's not something that bothers me to have to be checking emails on a Saturday. I'm very, very careful not to send emails on a Saturday. Last week, when I had this counsel work I'm doing, I had an arbitrator sending an email saying hello. I'm appointed as an arbitrator. Hello to the parties at 1 a.m. 1 a.m. on a Saturday. To me, this is something that is not usual. I can write those emails because sometimes at 1 a.m. on a Saturday is the time I get to do this, but I would never send it out because it is very intrusive. So to me, it's find your own paths, set your own boundaries. There's nothing set in stone. Some people are bothered to be working on a Sunday. Some people is the best moment to draft a PO too, because this is the time where your kids, in my case, are in theater sessions. So that's when I talk, or their father is playing with them. So to me, knowing that you can have it all, defining what having all looks like to you, and flexibility in how and when you are who, a mother, a daughter, a friend, to be there to yourself and finding me time is something that to me was very important. Going away from the classical and traditional models. And I do agree with Edna that the first 10 years of my career, 15 years of my career, teleworking was, working from home or was just not the case. And after that, way before the pandemic came in, I fought very hard to work from home, and I didn't even have the kids at that time, like 7, 8 years before the pandemic hit in, but it made every difference. Flexible. I didn't want to stop working, and when my kids came in, that was great. I didn't want to stop working at 5 p.m. I just didn't want to work between 6 and 8 p.m. because that was bath time and nighttime. I didn't have a problem connecting afterwards, but I needed a structure and a professional flexibility to understand that the paper will be there if you only trust me and let me organize myself as I deem fit, and it works best for me, for my family needs, for my personal needs, and for my professional needs. And that has been very, very useful and helpful, and it's something that I have as a mantra. Both, I can have anything I want, it's just me deciding how, and flexibility should be the name of the game. Now, it's not my kids any longer, well, a little bit, yes, but it's our elders that need our attention, which is also something that it will impact your world. And because I know that flexibility, I can juggle better, knowing that you will always be in the edge, and you will always have 7 balls in the air, just hoping no one falls. Or if someone has to fall, it will be the one that's not that important any longer.
Thank you, Elena. I also like having it all. I'm also very ambitious. And I have here some questions from the participants, and this will be an open question. How does transitioning from counsel or tribunal secretary to a decision maker, that will be an arbitrator, impact one's approach to arbitration proceedings? Who would like to answer this question?
Well, I'll be happy to give some or share my thoughts.
Yeah, please, Jose Antonio.
Yes. So, well, that's a very very important question. One way of addressing is if and some of some of our colleagues have had the fortune of doing such clean transition. So you are counsel for say 10 years, and then one day you wake up and say no more counsel. Now I'm going to be an arbitrator, and they do a transition. I mean, there's some time in between there when there's a mix, and it's a very clean transition. Others have who are professors and have had the luck and luxury of being an arbitrator from day one. They have not even had to transition. In my case, I have a strong belief that that being counsel and having been counsel has educated me in a very practical manner to being an arbitrator, and sort of my particular DNA, having had to do the whole career as counsel, and then having had to do the research and the drafting, and then dealing with witnesses, preparing them, cross-examining opposing the witnesses of the opposing party, etc., has brought a tremendous amount of information and practical knowledge, without which I could hardly be as prepared as I believe I am now in my role as an arbitrator. So to answer the question, I think that there's a huge amount of information and practical knowledge that benefits from being counsel in your role as an arbitrator. Of course, the roles are different. One is an advocacy role. One is guided by either defending or representing a party as counsel and trying to win the case. Of course, being as helpful as you can be to the tribunal. That is the role of counsel. And the other role is that of an arbitrator, which can be very much informed by your past. Here, you're attempting to decide the case in accordance with the applicable law, but it's also very important to understand the struggles that parties are going through. To understand that yes, of course, they are opposing parties, but there are practical matters that you can help them with as an adjudicator. So the transition is there. You're not there to take sides. You're there to follow a process and to find the answers that are given by the law that you have been trusted to apply. So that's sort of my take. And lastly, I would say that there's not necessarily a black and white transition, because as many of us here are both arbitrators and counsel, and of course, we're not arbitrator and counsel in the same cases, so that's because that's a huge issue conflict. But keeping clear what your role is important as well. And those are my thoughts till now.
Thank you, Jose Antonio. Well, unfortunately, this lovely panel has come to an end. But I would like to thank you all for sharing your experiences, your thoughts. It's always very enriching to hear from others' experiences. And thank you for making it possible. And well, see you soon, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.